Hey, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your patience. All right, let's get into it. I will share my screen shortly. All right. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Godwin. Okay. Yes. So we continue with our entrepreneurship and financial literacy discussion, and I want us to take a quick refresher exercise based off of the things that we learned last week. Hopefully you were here. So may I please request the poll, please? It's a very simple question. If you were here last week or you have listened to the video, to the recording of the class, please go ahead and attempt the question up on your screen. Choose the correct option or options. A good business strategy pays attention to. You have the following options. Operating environment. So, okay, was set as a single choice. It's actually multiple. It's supposed to be a multiple choice question. So you can choose more than one answer. Operating environment, production center, internal capacity, systems, and financial targets. So based off of last week's session, can we have responses, please? Okay, we have 4 people who chose operating environment, 1 person who chose systems, and 1 person who chose financial targets. All right. I believe that this is the 6 people that we have in the room. I'm assuming that because it's single choice, so you could only choose one answer. The people who chose operating environment are correct. The person who chose systems is wrong. The person who chose financial targets is correct as well. So the 3 things that we looked at as part of last week's class was the operating environment. Remember when I spoke about both the macro and the micro economic considerations, right? So from things like government policies, to your fiscal environment and the likes. That's the operating environment of any business. We also looked at internal capacity, right? From your human resource to the information, to technology, to processes. And then the 3rd thing we looked at was financial targets, right? Because your business strategy, based off of impacted by your operating environment and your internal capacity, will deliver on your financial targets. That was how we explained it. So the person who chose systems is not correct. Financial targets, correct. Thank you for your participation. Okay, we'll go ahead. Now, just a few things to note when you are planning to start a business or you are currently running a business, depending on the scale at which it is. It's always important to ensure that in your business or as you plan to start, you have a winning strategy. And the winning strategy has 3 key elements. 1 is high quality research or feedback. Remember, we spoke in the last 2 weeks, we have spoken quite extensively about the importance of customers to any business, right? And the fact that the value you create, whether in the form of a good, a product, or a service, is largely determined, that quality is largely determined, that value is determined by the people receiving it, who are your customers. So you can feel that you have created a valuable product, but your customers don't see that it is as valuable as you. They don't place that premium on it, as it were. They don't place that level of value. They don't perceive that it's delivering the level of value that you have ascribed to your product or your service. So research and feedback from the external environment helps you make decisions that are embedded in reality. A second thing is a strong plan of action. This involves an innovative approach that may be the differentiator in an already saturated market. And of course, the right people to implement the plan. A plan is only as good as the people implementing it. Great strategies fall flat on their face because they have not been clearly communicated to the implementers, or you don't even have the right people to implement. So we say that in business, when you're starting out, I mean, the bootstrapping mindset is important, where the business owner, the proprietor, does it all. You are the accountant, you are the sales rep, you are the business development person, you are the recruiter, you are doing everything. And that's understandable at a level when you're starting up. And depending on the nature of business you're running. Now, if you're positioning to get funding, for example, you're looking to get investments from VCs and the likes, or angel investors, you also want to make sure that you structure properly. So you can't be the one doing everything. At the very least, the expectation is that you're outsourcing some of those critical elements of your business operations, essentially things that have to do with people, where you don't have the required skill set. So for example, if you're not good with numbers, right, you will struggle in your business. If you don't know the basics of numbers, if you don't understand how your business numbers, you don't understand your business numbers, then that's a recipe for disaster. The solution to that is finding somebody who does, right, at a fee. It doesn't have to be a full-time employee. It can be someone that you just have sessions with on a monthly basis, who comes, who does your books, tidies up. As long as you're keeping records, you have your bank statements, you ensure that your transactions pass through the banks, right, so that it is reflected in your bank statements. Over and above, I'm already speaking to good financial management practices, by the way. I know that we'll get into that at some point. But you want to make sure that you are keeping proper books. You are recording your expenses, as well as tracking your revenue as they come in, yeah? And making sure that money doesn't come directly into your hands, even if your business is very cash dependent. You want to make sure that at the end of a business day, you are depositing the cash receipts into a bank and making sure that you have accurate records for this, because these are the things that whoever you outsource this responsibility to, say maybe an accountant or something, will request for these things. These things are called source documents. They're called source documents. Now, the bigger your business, or if you're positioning to, like I said earlier, to attract funding, one of the things you want to pay attention is this bookkeeping, right? Because some business investors would request audited accounts. They want to see that you have been audited. That is, an audit firm has looked through your activities. They have established, efficiency in your operations. They have established prudency. They have established that you are also, complying with the stipulated regulations that govern your business. They are looking to see if you have structure, if there's corporate governance and the likes. Again, depends on the level at which you're functioning. So quality research and feedback, strong plan of action, and of course, the right people to implement the plan. A winning strategy can be crafted by finding innovative ways to either cut cost, increase revenue, increase market share for existing businesses, or to create presence to attract and to retain customers for new businesses. Now, let's go quickly to market research. Market research is the activity of collecting and analyzing information about consumer needs, product or service, and industry competitors. The activity, note it's an activity, it's a task, it's a requirement for anyone who is serious about business, either starting one or scaling what currently exists. Remember, we spoke extensively about that as well, because there's a way you can assume that you're adding value, you're solving a problem. Meanwhile, the opposite is the case. Or you're even doing it, but it's coming at a more expensive, it's a more expensive venture. And so people would rather go for competition. Why? Because they would get pretty much same value, but at a cheaper price. Market research is essential for entrepreneurs to assess demand and to understand the competitive landscape. So some basic research methods, I think I'm going to share 5 here that you should pay attention to. And these are basic methods for anyone who's either starting out or you're looking to grow in what you have. One is surveys. Everybody conducts surveys these days, right? And it involves asking a set of precise questions to a target audience to collect quantitative data, right? Now, it's important here that I underscore the point that if your questions are not precise, right, there's a tendency that your survey will not deliver on its mandate. It will not deliver its desired objective. So if you're asking questions that are either confusing, they are not direct, there's room for multiple interpretations, then you would not be helping your audience to objectively respond to that, to those set of questions. Remember, what you're going for is quantitative data. Surveys will typically be looking to the analysis, the data analysis, right? Upon receipt, we'll be looking to measuring things like how many people, feel a certain way about a product or about a service, how many people are maybe dissatisfied, how many people are satisfied, how many people utilize a particular, so it's very quantitative in nature. They can be administered online or via phone or in person. So I don't know if you're familiar with what the telecoms industry does, or even the banks, actually. Banks, customer service officers will call you from the contact center, and they would ask you if you have some time. They would like to ask you a few questions, I don't know how many of us are familiar with that, if you experienced it before. But it's part of how businesses collate information, okay? These surveys are useful for gauging customer preferences, satisfaction, and potential demand for a product or service. Okay, so just to mention that I am unable to access the chat room just yet. So if you do need to pause me at any time, maybe to ask questions or to call my attention to my audio, please unmute and do that. Thank you. So we've spoken about surveys. The second is focus groups. Focus groups. It consists of a small group of individuals from your target market who discuss their perceptions, opinions, and attitudes towards a product, a service, or a concept, okay? So a few people, a sample size is what we call them, a sample size or a focus group from your target market. So let's assume, for example, that your target market are Gen Zs, yeah? Or Gen Alphas. So you're looking for people, male and female, in a particular age group, pulling a few of them together and then having conversations around your product, your service, or a concept you're introducing into the market, okay? So this qualitative method provides in-depth insights into customer needs and potential improvements. In fact, what some organizations do, or some businesses, is that they will give sample products to a focus group and give them a period of time to go and utilize, to test it, to try it, right? And then they will pull them in and discuss their opinions, their perception, their findings. So this is also another research method that can be leveraged. The third is interview. So if you are here and you're following, you would recall that the first type of basic research method we mentioned is survey. The second is focus groups. Now the third is interviews. This is conducting one-on-one interviews, and it allows for a deeper exploration of individual customer experiences and expectations. In fact, the telecoms or the bank contact center analogy I use is even better suited to this than even the survey, because these ones, they call you one-on-one and they ask you specific questions, okay? So it's very similar in nature because you can also conduct surveys via phone calls, but the kind of questions you asked here in the interview, under the interview research method, are very personal, they're very specific, right? Because they want to get your own user experience, perhaps to use that as a testimonial or to just get feedback with a view to improving based on the information you provide. Interviews can uncover detailed information about customer motivations and customer behavior, okay? So the way a nursing mother, right, or the mom of a toddler will perhaps interface with a particular type of child care product can be very different from how an empty nester mom. The meaning of empty nester is someone whose children are already away from the home. That is, they're either in university or they've even married or whatever. They are called empty nesters. So the comparing, you can't just generalize and say you have created a childcare product for women and the expectation is that everybody's jumping at it. Absolutely not. If you say your target market is women, it's a very broad category because I've just described to you 2 women, same gender, but very different realities. Okay. So that's what the interview method helps with. Now, number 4, observations. So again, the first is surveys. Second is focus groups. The third is interviews. Now the fourth is observations. Observational research involves watching how consumers interact with products or services in a natural setting. This method helps identify usage patterns and potential areas for enhancement without direct interaction. So an example can be if you recently maybe set up an amusement park, okay? So you might not find people come and ask you, oh, are you going, why are you going on that ride? Why do you like that ride? But what you will see is there's a lot of observation happening in the background, and the management of such a place can determine based off of observation without having to conduct surveys or without having to interview people or having focus group sessions, can very clearly see which rides or which games are best engaged by who. So is it younger kids? Is it older kids? Is it adults, right? So they know that, okay, this one is a seller, is a bestseller. This one, we need to improve on it. Why aren't people engaging it? These things are seen by mere observation, okay? Now, the fifth one and the final, these are just some examples of basic research methods. Field trials. Oftentimes, organizations or industries like the pharmaceuticals typically employ this approach. Field trials or test marketing involve introducing a product or service to a limited audience to evaluate its performance and to gather feedback. This approach helps assess market response before a full-scale launch. One of the things that I try, and I use that word try very, very deeply because it's been quite a long while. So TV for me personally makes me fall asleep. When I'm in a stressed season, all I need to do is sit in front of a TV, a movie, a series, whatever, and I'm gone. I sleep off, right? Now, one of the things when I try to watch TV that I would typically watch on Netflix is medical series. I like the medical field. I'm not a doctor, but I just enjoy seeing how they solve people's problems health-wise, right? But I've noticed that oftentimes when they're trying to solve a case, you know, maybe it's a cure for cancer, maybe, or any of these other really terrible diseases, what they do is they try and gather a group of people. The pharmaceutical companies gather a group of people by age, by ethnicity, you know, by gender sometimes. So is ethnicity being is person Black, white American, or a Black American, or things like that. And so they decide how to, I mean, they apply on these test groups, as it were. They conduct the trial. Exactly, Grey's Anatomy, thank you. The likes of Grey's Anatomy, you know, New Amsterdam and the likes. You see the pharmaceutical companies would, you know, put this forward. Then Yes, I'm also seeing. So that's one example. Interestingly, I was just going into the FMCG space now. Okay, Clement, thank you for that. FMCG companies also, you will see that at some point they can choose a particular location, or they introduce a new product to the market before it goes before they go all out on it. Sometimes they introduce it as gifts attached to an existing product. I don't know how many of you have seen things like that. So you will see that the product is not exactly on sale, because you can't go and say you want to buy a carton of it, but they have attached it to another popular product that they have, right? It's because they want to see how well received it will be. So it comes free, and you see things like it almost looks like a promo. And you know, Nigerians that we like promo. So we will go and pick the one that has the free soap or free whatever. But if you look at it, they've not started mass producing such a product. Yeah. So those are examples of field trials. All right. Thank you, Clement and Juliet, for your contribution to this. Now let's move quickly to business modeling. A business model is a strategic management framework describing, now don't dwell too much on the word management framework. Just recognize it as a strategic framework, right? Put in place by business owners, describing the elements of the business, including the product or the service, the infrastructure, the customers, and of course the finances, which are the critical components of any business. For a business to say that they are existing and in operations, there has to be a product or a service, there has to be the infrastructure that is driving the operations, there has to be customers that they are selling to, and of course, it must translate into money at the end of the day, bottom line. So there's something called the business model canvas. How many people are familiar with this term? If you are, just put a comment in the chat room there so I can see it. Familiar with the term business model canvas? I'm sure that a lot of us have already heard the phrase business plan, right? You're familiar with a business plan. Now, the business model canvas works like a business plan. It's just, okay, so let me backtrack. When depending on how old you are, right? Your understanding of business is that you should put together a business plan, which is absolutely correct. Depending also on who you're engaging, you have to have a detailed business plan that shows your technical analysis, that is, how will this business operate? And of course, your financial analysis, which is how will this business make money? What does it need to start? And then how will it, be profitable in the foreseeable future? Yeah. Now, the business model canvas that I'm introducing to you now is a simplified, it's not a replacement of your business plan, but it's a simplified way of helping you put together all those thoughts, especially if you're just trying to start business, to put together all your thoughts. You can then use what you have in your business model canvas to build a very detailed 100-page business plan. But I promise you, you don't need a 100-page document to start your business, okay? This helps if you can articulate your thoughts very well, and I will show you how it works. It's a template that describes how a business creates, delivers, and captures value. Recall where we started from, people, 2 weeks ago. And then, of course, we spent a lot of time deep diving it last week, which is on value creation and value proposition. So your business model helps you articulate the things that will enable you create, deliver, and of course, capture value. So the template you have on screen was designed by a gentleman called Alexander Osterwalder. A couple, I don't know, significant number of years ago. And interestingly, it was a research effort, right? I think it was his PhD research program that he used in co-creating this alongside, I think, his professor. And it has become something that we use a lot now, especially in the tech space. In fact, not just tech, actually, a number of forward-looking industries have embraced this. A number of new industries too have taken on board this, because it's very easy to ideate and to keep iterating on your plans as you go along using this canvas. What some structured organizations do is they have it in some room on the wall, and they're able to fill this in from time to time. If there are things that are changing, there's a need to change strategy. Remember that this is a strategy document, by the way. They're able to effectively do that. Now, for you as a business owner or as someone looking to start in business, if you have this template, you can build on each of the points there. Now, it has 9 boxes, and I will talk through them very quickly. Now, the first box is called key partners, right? Key partners. These are the network of partners that make executing on the business model effective. Now, I should say this, that the key partners, the key activities, and the key resources are under a generic bucket called infrastructure. So when we say, what infrastructure does this business need to be able to start? It needs partners. Then it needs certain operational activities, okay? And then it needs resources. So the word key there is to say the most important things that this business needs are the things that should be documented. So the partners are a network of people that make executing on the business model effective. The key activities are the most important tasks that a business must carry out in order to deliver its value proposition. Key resources are the most important things that you need to have to successfully execute your key activities. Okay, so that's the first category. And I said it's under a broad header called infrastructure. Now let's move to the second category, which is the next line. Now you can see there's just one thing there, value proposition. I'd like someone to please read what is under value proposition for me. Kindly go ahead, unmute, and please read. Do I have any takers, please? Please go ahead, Clement. Thank you very much.
All right, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
All right, so value proposition. This is the value which a product or business is delivering to a customer segment.
Okay, thanks for that. Now, again, the first category is called infrastructure, and it is those 3 things above. For the value proposition, that is the offering. It is broadly categorized as the offering. So what does this business have to offer? And that is provided for under the value proposition. Now, the third category, right, is the category of customers. So the customer segments, the channels, and the customer relationships. Customer segments are the customers that you are creating value for in your business. The channels are the communication, distribution, and sales channels through which the value proposition is delivered to the customer. And of course, the relationships. This is the relationship which we establish with our customers to be able to deliver the value proposition successfully. And I'm sure somebody's wondering, how does this even work? I'm going to show you a sample, right? So that when you are then doing yours, because this is going to be the activity for this week. I should ask Godwin, please, do I just post this on the WhatsApp group? Do I post the templates there? Where do they submit to?
Yes, the WhatsApp group. That's
Okay,
for
so
the assignment, right?
how they have to DM me or what?
No, so you could just share a Google Drive link. So
Okay,
you have access to that.
fantastic. Okay, thank you. Okay, so the assignment will then be for each person to create based on the business that they are looking to start or that they've even started already to populate this business model canvas. Okay, so please pay attention so that when you are creating yours, you would know how to do it. And I mean, there are no right or wrong answers. Technically, my responsibility is to guide you in ensuring that you are able to optimally utilize the tool. All right, so the final category, line 4, there, it has just 2 things. One is the cost structure, and the second is the revenue streams. Now, I should say this before we go too far, that under your value proposition, it can be in 2 forms. One is quantitative, and the other is qualitative. So if you recall what we defined value proposition as, that is the value that your customers will receive, okay? Now, for quantitative, The value can be driven by price and efficiency or efficiencies. So essentially, you're saying the value that you're bringing to bear on a particular product or service is a value of price or a value of efficiency. For the qualitative, it is overall customer experience, right, and outcome. So what feeling do you want to leave your customers feeling when they utilize your product? You will see some of the ads that we interact with, right? And you will see just how they are so targeted, and the value proposition is really how the customer would feel upon utilizing a particular product or service. So from skincare products, to perfumes. I mean, you see a lot of crazy adverts. Let me give this example, very weird and funny. When I was pregnant some time back, I think it was my first child or so, I remember, you know how they say pregnant women crave all sorts of nonsense, yeah? Good stuff and sometimes not so good stuff. Now, let me contextualize this so that you can understand what I'm saying. I don't take alcohol, okay? But I was pregnant then and I was watching TV and an advert of Guinness came up on screen. So from the deep, how many of you remember that Guinness advert? That the screen is completely black and they show the Guinness being poured into a glass, the black and gold, the black liquid that then foams on top. You see, I'm giving you the description. And then has this like almost golden foam on top, right? With the glass, the Guinness glass. The glass is branded Guinness, and then it is sweating, essentially showing to you how cold the drink was. You remember it, okay? Thank you. It's the sweating for you, God bless you, Dawn. It was the sweating for me because pregnant women are always craving ice, craving cold drinks and all. And this was, my husband was, as in he had a hysterical laughter. Just the way I was glued to the TV watching that ad. Like, if anybody had offered me that cold glass, there's a high likelihood that I would have drank it. The way I was so enraptured by that ad, right? So again, how we want our customers to feel, that is the qualitative value proposition. How we want them to see themselves. You see perfumes, you see makeup, you see different things as skincare products, right? That make a woman who may not have ₦1 million in her account feel like by the time I use this deodorant or use this perfume, I feel like $1 million or $1 million, different things like that, yeah? So the question to you is, what are you doing? What value proposition? Is it a quantitative or a qualitative value proposition that you are pushing out? So is your value proposition driven by price or by making a process or a system more efficient, or even an existing product or service more efficient in terms of its delivery and user experience, yeah? Or so for things like banks, that's what they sell. They sell efficiency. They will tell you if you use our payment platforms in 30 seconds, your money will go through, etc., etc., all sorts of promises. It's always around these two categories, quantitative or qualitative, okay? And of course, when we think about our customer segments, you are looking at which of the target demographics or the psychographics, as it were, am I focusing on? So is my product a mass market product, or my service, is it for everybody, all comers? Is it a niche market, right? Is it a segmented market? Now, a company applies additional segmentation within an existing customer segment. So like the example I use, your customer segments can be women, but there's additional segmentation that you now do to say women under 30, because these skincare products will not work for women above 50 or something like that, but you are targeting women under 30 who have not started getting wrinkled just yet, right? So Segmentation is another this thing. Diversity as well, right? A business serves multiple customer segments with different needs and characteristics. Okay, so I just thought to spotlight this under those two categories. Now, the final one, which is finances, your cost structure, and of course, your revenue streams. Please note also that for your cost structure, the things that drive your cost structure are the very first line, your key partners, your key activities, and your key resources, okay? Your cost structure are all the costs that the business would incur in successfully executing the business model, while your revenue streams are all the payments for the value proposition successfully offered to your customer. Now, the last line that has to do with customers, customer segments, your channels, and of course, customer relationships are the things that will deliver on your revenue streams. So please, if you have any questions around here, do ask me so that when you are building your own business model, you will be able to do this properly. So let's take a quick look. Can anybody tell me what that logo on the top of the screen is? If you know the logo, just type it in the chat room. Netflix, thank you very much. Okay, so this is the business model canvas for Netflix. You can see under their key partners, they've identified content creators, studios, distributors, manufacturers, yeah, and of course, the ISPs. Now, for key activities, you have content licensing. These are the things that they need to do. Remember the earlier definitions that we gave. So the things that they need to do to operationalize their business model. Production needs to happen, platform development, and of course, you have to create algorithms. What are the key resources required? They need a content library. Note that this business model canvas is for a media and entertainment entity, which for an example is Netflix. It would typically also apply to your likes of Amazon Prime and any other media and entertainment platform that falls in this category, the audiovisual. So content library, recommendation algorithms, your streaming platforms, and of course, they need original content. So all of the submissions that people put together and share with them to utilize their platform. You know what they are really. They're simply just, they don't as it were. Well, I was gonna say they don't own content. Initially, when they started, they didn't own content, but to sustain, they had to start own content, which is why, so what they will do is they will pay. You see things like Netflix series, original Netflix series, right? Or original Netflix movie. What that means essentially is that they have paid people to go and write scripts and develop content for them, okay? So they now, by implication, own such content. All right, value proposition is a vast library of on-demand content and personalized recommendations. This is what they are offering. Can someone tell me what this is? Given the qualitative and the quantitative description, and why? I want us to have a quick discussion, people of God. Sorry, today is Sunday, so I've called you all people of God. Okay? Can we get feedback, please? Anybody? So given the explanation I gave earlier about your value proposition being either qualitative or quantitative, let me help you again. Quantitative is based off of price and efficiency, while qualitative is overall customer experience and outcome. So which do you think Netflix value proposition satisfies? Is it a qualitative value proposition, or is it a quantitative? Okay, so I'm going to need somebody to choose a response. I can see all the response being dropped, but you need to unmute and explain why. Because that's the way I know that you've understood this value proposition discussion. So who would like to go, please? Okay, I see comments. Please go ahead. Somebody's trying to speak.
Okay, hold on, man. This is Clement.
Thanks, Clement.
Okay, so based on the explanation so far and, from the experience of being a Netflix user, I think their value proposition is more channeled to the qualitative value proposition, right? And the reason is that Netflix tend to serve, the overall experience users get from, streaming movies on their platform, the whole quality of the movies you tend to enjoy, and how how seamless their streaming platform is, and which means when you are streaming movies, right? If your network is good, your movies don't tend to glitch or break at the point or something. So I think I would go for the qualitative. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have a dissenting opinion? I see in the room we have, everybody seems to be on the qualitative. SS, did you get the question now? Qualitative, okay, I see your response. Qualitative. Nobody thinks it's quantitative as well. Okay, Clement, very spot on. Thank you so much. SS, thank you. Yes. And that's what I wanted to point out. It can be both. Now, if you look at the two things that are captured here, if you had to categorize based on, and Clement, you did a fantastic job in just helping us understand from a user experience point of view, and you're absolutely spot on. But in addition to that, it can be both. A business can set out to meet both quantitative and qualitative objectives. Because if you look at the first value proposition here, it says a vast library of on-demand content. Now, think about it. How did we used to watch movies back in the days? People of God, it's a Sunday, so I'm going to let us all discuss together. How did we used to watch movies back in the days? In the 90s, how did you used to watch movies? Exactly. Thank you. VOD. What one is VOD? DVD, okay. Which one is VOD? Please. Rentals, yes. DVDs, you buy from video stores. Yes, we used to buy DVDs a lot. Can I take you back? Before DVDs, how were we watching movies? Oh, video on demand. Right. Somebody said NTA. Don't say NTA. Fair point. NTA by 10 o'clock, after they finish the news, they will now show one late night movie, boring something. Going to the theater, going to the cinemas, okay? How many people remember VHS? I feel like I'm giving away my age. VHS, exactly. So you either go and rent or you buy, right? Before cinemas even came to light at all, cinemas are recent. Cinemas are your 2000s type, they started happening I think in the 2000s, yes, but before it was VHS we used to watch, or you go and rent it. That was what you used to rent at the film club or whatever, any of the movie rental places. So what they've then done now is to make it grant easy access, right? So it's a vast library of on-demand content, video on-demand content, cassettes. Yes, that's what VHS is, cassettes, right? So instead of DVDs, instead of VHS, even going to the movies, how many movies can you possibly go and pay for and watch in a day, compared to when you sit down with your Netflix in one day and you want to binge watch, right? You can watch a ton of movies. Imagine that you have to pay for each of the movies or each of the series, at a cinema. So they've also satisfied that bucket of a price and efficiency, quantitative value proposition, in addition to the qualitative overall user experience value proposition focus with personalized recommendations. So all the algorithms that they are investing, you can see how these things translate. So they spend a lot of time building algorithms as part of their key activities. They also spend money in recommendation algorithms, so that as you engage, they can deliver to you this value proposition of personalized recommendations, which is why when you watch one type of movie, before you know it, the next time they are suggesting it to you. Why? Because they have seen that once or twice you've watched this particular genre of movie or series, And so they start to bring similar recommendations to you. Okay, so we see how all of this ties together. Now let's move to their customer base. So customer relationships, personalized recommendations, online support, self-service. For their customer segments, they have subscribers. That's the only customer segment that they have. Subscribers seeking online streaming entertainment. And of course, they have channels, online platform, devices such as smartphones, tablets, smart TVs, and laptops. Okay, SS said the VHS were cheap, 50 naira, 100 naira per video tape or DVD. Hello, sir. Is your comparison of cheap or your definition of cheap then, are you looking at it now or looking at it then? Let's be clear. Because in the 90s, this thing you have called 50 naira, 100 naira. Do you know what you could use 100 naira to buy, apart from going to buy a video tape? 100 naira then was not cheap. Even in 2000, that's like 25 years ago, by the way. How much was a bottle of Coke? Let's start from there. So how many exact? Someone said 100 naira was maybe not like 1 million, maybe more like 5K now or something, you know. Exactly, latest films, all those Indian movies and the likes. Anyway, so I'm happy that we get it right and we're able to draw comparisons from our current realities. Now, let's look at cost structure. Remember what I said earlier, that the key partners, key activities, and key resources are your cost elements, right? So things like licensing, production, platform maintenance, marketing, and support, all of these things that speak to these three categories are the things where you would expend money on, okay? They're your costs, the sources of your expenses, essentially. That's what your cost structure is speaking to. And of course, how does this business make money? So the cost structure is answering the question, how is it spending money? And then revenue is how is it making money? And obviously, based off of the customer relationships, customer segments, and the channels, it's making money from subscriptions, different types of subscriptions, okay? I hope that is clear enough. We will be doing that in the course of the week as our take home. I'll just share a template and you don't have to fill it in the template. You can simply write it out, right? Just type it out. Take each category, key activities. Of course, you know you have to first define your business for me so that I can understand it, and then key activities. So I think I'll just share a template so that everybody can utilize that same format. I'll share a Word document. Okay, moving on. Let's take this quick exercise. And all you need to do is answer the question with the letter. So just drop the letter in the chat room. What is the main function of a business model canvas? What is the main function of a business model canvas? A, to compile a business financial reports for profit reporting. B, to design aesthetic elements of a product for a business. C, to map out the key elements and strategies of a business. Okay, let's see. Who was the first person to answer that question? SS. Well done. So let me see the first three people, SS, Elizabeth, and Abdullah Fiz. Joy, Clement, and Christiana, well done. Everyone is correct. The answer is C. Okay, so I think I still have one more poll. I saw it pop up. Please, let's take that poll as well before we proceed. So choose the correct statement. You can only make one choice. Value proposition is a process of building or adding value to a product or service, while value creation is a promise a company makes to customers about the value they will receive. Value creation is a process of building or adding value to a product or service, while value proposition is a promise a company makes to customers about the value they will receive. Which is the correct statement based off of our learnings? Okay. So out of the 6 participants, it's interesting. It's an even spread. An even spread. All right, so the correct answer is the second option. And let me tell you, it's a trick question, and I put it deliberately because I know that it's can be confusing using those two words interchangeably, but they mean very distinct things. So the process of building, that's where you should have known it could not be proposition. Process of building, to build something is to create something, right? So it's the process of building or adding value, that's value creation. While value proposition is a promise. So when you think about proposition is a promise. In fact, can we localize the conversation and say, when somebody is proposing to somebody else, they are making a promise to them that if you follow me, if you marry me, I will give you a better life. I would be true to you. You know, there's a promise of value to be enjoyed. That's the reason why it's a proposal or a proposition, right? Same thing with a business proposition. If someone brings a business to you and says, come and invest, you will get these returns. Do we understand now? Clement says, lies we tell ourselves. Okay. So everyone who chose the first one, I hope you've seen the mistake, and just use those words. Creation, we're building something, right? Proposition, it's a promise of value to be enjoyed. Okay, so let's get into financial planning and management. And you have a question. Please go ahead, Clement. Clement, I think you can unmute, right? Go ahead and share your question. Oh, you don't have the mic, right? Moderator, sir, our class facilitator, are we able to grant access? Okay, Clement, I'm not sure why we can't hear you speak. You were speaking earlier. Maybe you can type your question in the chat room while I continue. All right, so anyone looking to start in a business, or even if you've started and you're still maybe at the early stage, a fundamental question that I'm sure for those who have started, you'll be asking is, how much will it cost to start this fantastic business idea that I have, right? And these are just a few or some examples of the types of costs that you incur, at the startup phase. One is a cost for the registration of permits of the business. Now, again, I am teaching standard practice, but I am not unaware of the things that happens, right? Which is sometimes people start the business and it is only after the business has gained any sort of traction before they go ahead and invest in registering it. It's neither here nor there. We can assume that prior to registration, they were trying to test the waters. But if you're serious and you believe strongly in your business idea, you have done all of the things that we've asked you to do around conducting market research and the likes, establishing value proposition, okay? Then you want to be serious from the onset so that you can position for funding, and you can build a reputable business that people will be happy as you scale. They would love to be a part of it. They say it is not, you don't start to behave like a rich man when you are rich. It is from now. So you need to start to behave like where you're going to and not necessarily where you are. I hope that makes sense and it helps someone. So your registration and permits is the cost of incorporating the entity which you intend to transact your business with. Other regulatory permits may be required also depending on the nature of your business. So for example, if you're running an import-dependent business, beyond just registering your business, whether as a limited liability company or as a sole proprietorship, or depending if you're in the social impact space, maybe as an incorporated guarantee or as a limited by guarantee type organization. Regardless of how you are posturing, there might be other regulatory permits that will be required of you, okay? When we get into the legal and regulatory side of entrepreneurship, I would address some of these setups a bit better. Research and development. Every amount spent in the early stage of developing your business idea must be recorded. Now, one thing I mean, in the course of sitting and consulting for small to mid-scale type businesses, I find that business owners are not very, I mean, you are a visionary, or a visionary. You have the idea, but you're not diligent enough to document. So documentation is always a challenge because you're sitting with somebody and they're telling you, I spent a lot of money. Oh, I spent a lot of money. I said, okay, can I see? Show me evidence that you have spent a lot. There's nothing to show. They can't show, but they have spent money. But the money did not go through any accounts. The business does not have an account yet, right? There's a lot of cash transactions, or just not even being mindful of the amounts, not getting receipts, not getting invoices. So you pay somebody to do your website, you didn't get an invoice from them that you have kept, just little things here and there. Now, all of these types of early stage expenses can be regarded as part of your equity contribution in the event of a capital injection by an investor. Okay, you want to be able to quantify all of that beyond in addition to your business idea. You want to say, this is how much I have spent in ideating, in carrying out research, in building the brand, and little things like that. There is land, rent, and building. Also, please let me say that this is not applicable to every form of business. Understand that where we are coming from is a world and a system where businesses were mostly products or goods based. Now, in this gig economy with a lot of freelancing, people are able to ideate and conduct businesses from the comfort of their bedroom, in one country in Indonesia, rendering services to people in America, to people in Nigeria and the likes. Things like land and building don't necessarily apply, okay? So depending on the nature of the business, or if it's a service-based type business that can be operated from anywhere. However, you should decide early in the development stage whether your business requires a physical location and the amount of financial resources available to secure that location. Options can be to either buy land or to rent. Furniture, please let me apologize for the typo, okay? Furniture and fittings, everything that is not in the structure of the building should be regarded as furniture and fitting, excluding your work tools. So you cannot classify your laptop, right, or your desktop as a furniture and fitting. Okay, so quantify and limit the financial outlay to avoid passion spending. Now, you see business owners, they've gone to Dubai, they have seen the land of the land where dreams are possible. Anything is possible. And then they come and they are trying to rent a space and they want a particular type of lights that they saw there. The cost of the lights alone will fit up the entire space. So things like passion spending, you want to make sure that you have a budget. You want to make sure that you benchmark as well to say, my cost for furniture and fittings should not exceed X amount of the entire startup costs. Because when investors, now there are certain types of businesses you start that you have the idea, right? And there are investors who fund ideas. Let me take that again. There are investors who fund ideas, right? There are VCs, venture capitalists, and their business is to fund ideas. They fund you at idea stage, okay? But they will make such decisions based off of two primary things. One, your product or your service, okay? You built a product, even if you're at MVP stage or whatever, they can fund you to finish it. Some also consider your projections, yeah? So your cash flow projections, your costs. If they see frivolities, right, around certain elements that they expect you to be a bit more prudent. So they see you wanting to splurge on things like furniture and fittings over and above more critical things that have to do with the products that you're building. It's a red flag for them, okay? So equipment and work tools, the cost of all equipment, machines, and work tools. This may include, but not limited to, production machines, to generators, to motor vehicles, and other assets required to run the business. So up on my screen is a sample template that you can use in capturing your startup costs. Under registration and permits, you see things like your business incorporation. That was what I was referring to earlier. Are you a limited liability company? Are you registering as a limited by guarantee or a sole proprietorship? There are other forms of permits too. For every business that is being registered, there's something called SCOMO in Lagos, Nigeria. In Nigeria now. There's a certification, an anti-money laundering certification that you need to get from EFCC if you're registering your business. And let me see, did somebody put up a comment? SCUML, that's SCUML. SCUML. There's a registration for patent if you are, building something that needs to be patented. Depending if you're operating from a local community, there's a local government permit that you might be required to also have. Research and development, you're looking at things like research itself, you're looking at business development, land and building, it's very clear, renovations and repairs, furniture and fittings, plumbing and electricals and installations, equipment and work tools, your machines, motor vehicles, generators, support equipment. Now, this list is not exhaustive. So I advise that you use real quotes and real prices also when you are preparing this. So which means you need to do your market research to get prices as close to reality as possible. Because the closer your financial plan is to reality, the easier it will be to start your business. Okay. Now, in the course of one of my careers, working in credit risk management, right? One of the things that you would find happen a lot is when businesses bring their business plans, oftentimes it is very padded. It is padded because they're looking for ways to also get money, to utilize money for personal reasons. And it shows because there are certain tests that you can, check, and you'll see that they have padded the numbers significantly. Sometimes people say so that just in case they don't approve the amount you're asking for, but at least they can give you close to the amount that you need by the time it is notched down, especially as an investor, right? But since you're using this for yourself and not for investment purposes, it is best. In fact, honestly, even if it's for investments, it's best that you are close to reality as possible. Okay. Now, some drivers of revenue, I think we'll talk through 8 of them very quickly. One is your sales volume. We've spoken about costs, okay? And I will talk about cost structure in a bit more detail. But let's look at the things that would allow a business entity make money. One is the volume of sales activities that happens in that business, the quantity of products or services sold. Increasing your sales volume can boost your revenue, assuming prices and costs remain constant. Pricing strategy is another form. The set price for products or services. Are your prices competitive, right? Are your prices cheaper than competition? Adjusting prices can impact your revenue. Higher prices would increase your revenue per unit, but can affect your demand. So in a bid to have more money, that is, have more revenue, if you make an uninformed decision to increase your price without considering what the market is saying, it can affect your demand. So people will go to competition instead of purchasing from you. Customer acquisition, the process of attracting new customers. Say every business should have a customer-based target. How many customers do I want to attract this month? How many do I want to attract in the quarter? How many do I want to attract? What's my target for increasing my customer base half year? And then, of course, how many customers do I want to have full year? Effective marketing and sales strategies can expand the customer base and drive revenue growth. The fourth is customer retention. It's one thing to attract customers, but are you retaining them? Or as you are getting them, are they leaving you? Are you having a lot of one-time non-returning customers, then it means you need to check your customer retention strategy. There's obviously something fundamentally wrong as they engage your business that is not making them come back. You're not having repeat customers. Then you need to ask questions. So customer retention, maintaining existing customers over time. High retention rates can lead to repeat sales and stable revenue streams. Now, number 5, product or service mix, the variety and combination of offerings. Yeah. So if you look at banks, for example, yes, I know that they are large corporates, but they are not only in the business of banking is really the business of lending, and depositing. That's really fundamentally the business of banking. That is taking money from those who have and making it available for those who don't have at an interest on both sides. Yeah. So, but in the midst of that primary mandate that they have done a ton of other things in how they deliver on that mandate. So from different types of products that speak to the lending side of their business, to different types of products that speaks to the deposit side of their business, right? And then even the ease of accessing, whether it is loans or accessing any of the deposit products, things like utilizing POS terminals, having cash. You don't have to get to the bank to access cash. You can access cash from ATM machines. They've gone into cards production. So just different ways of rendering service in the financial services industry, right? So that's an example of a product or a service mix. For products, obviously, you can look at the likes of your FMCGs, what they've done. Remember the very first class I spoke about how back in the late 90s, all you had was the canned products, canned goods. And at some point when they saw that because of just the growing rate of inflation and how difficult it was, Nigerians were getting poorer and poorer. They decided to start to create sizes that could reach the grassroots, resize their products to be able to attend to the mass market, essentially, so that they were not eliminating not due to any fault of theirs, just because manufacturing costs were also on the increase, so they obviously had to increase prices. But they had then, by reason of just growing costs of doing business and, of course, increased prices of commodities, they had eliminated a people group, and that people group was the mass market. And so with the mass market, it's a volume-driven game. Now, for those who are into distributorship of FMCG products, right, retailers and distributors, they will say to you clearly that they don't make money because the margins are really small. So say, for example, one sachet of Milo, maybe it comes at production directly from the company, say maybe at 150 naira now. And then the wholesaler would add their own 10 naira to it to get it to the distributor. Remember the value chain I talked about value chain last week. The distributor adds another 10 naira before it now finally gets to the retailer, who then decides to add maybe another 10 naira. So if you look at the margin, it's not a lot. However, how they make money is in being able to sell volume. And that's what this is speaking to, your drivers of revenue. Some things might not be very profitable on a unit cost, but from a volume perspective, it means growing your customer base to be able to sell more to people will help you achieve your revenue targets. Okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to find my cursor. It's disappeared on me. All right. The next is market expansion. I think that should be point number 6. Entering new geographic or demographic markets. Expanding into new markets can open additional revenue channels. Number 7 point is sales channel. Remember, we spoke about channels on our business model canvas. The platforms or methods that you use to sell products or services, whether it's online, retail, or wholesale. This requires you optimizing those sales channels so that you can enhance your reach and convenience for customers, and it would automatically translate into boosting your sales. And the last is operational efficiency, streamlining your operations to reduce costs and to improve service delivery. Efficient operations can lead to better customer experiences and increased sales. Okay. All right, just a quick thought about financial management. There are a number of ways to increase the profits from any business venture. The first is the old-fashioned way. Increase the capacity of the business to generate the revenue, while the second is to reduce the cost of providing value to the customers. Please note, as entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs, that while it is good to focus on growing the revenue of your business, you must pay equal attention to ensuring that a significant portion of that revenue generated is retained within the business. These are just financial management tips. Because of our time, we'll discuss them in a bit more detail next week. But let me see if we can quickly run through the cost structure so that I can take questions. Two major types of costs that you encounter when you do business. One is direct costs, also known as your variable costs. And the second is your indirect costs, also known as your fixed costs. The characteristics of your direct costs or your variable costs, these are costs that vary, just the way the name is variable, varies with your sales and production levels. It increases directly in proportion to the level of sales in monetary value, in output, or in units sold. An example is your cost of raw materials and consumables, your packaging materials, your sales commissions. These are examples. Now, while your indirect costs, on the other hand, it refers to all the costs that you must pay, even if you do not produce anything. Can somebody give me an example of such a cost? You must pay for it, whether you produce, or if you decide in a particular month, or as I'm the business owner, I'm just going to take a break, you will still pay that cost. What is that? Give me an example of such a cost. NEPA, I love it. Electricity or power, absolutely. Salaries, fantastic, beautiful. Those are examples of indirect costs. They remain the same regardless of the level of sales, and they only vary when you take action to increase them or to cut them back. That is the only way they change. So if you decide to fire your staff, you will reduce your salary expense or your overheads, as we call it. Shop rent, absolutely, rent. Electricity, if you decide to go from the normal NEPA line, where they give you bills every month, to pay as you use, right? The metered arrangement where you buy your power. So it means you can control that indirect costs, okay? And of course, for your rent, if you decide that you are moving out from a rented place to operating from your home, that's another cost, that's an indirect cost you can eliminate. But the truth of the matter is you're not completely eliminating it. I say to entrepreneurs that things like, especially when you're starting out a business, things like not paying yourself a salary, but dipping your hand into the revenue that comes in is very unprofessional, right? And businesses that operate that way do not last long. So from the onset, it's important that you start to put a structure in place where you pay yourself something, no matter how small. Pay yourself a salary so that you know that that is the only thing you can access, right? And that salary sits under your indirect costs. That salary, you can use it to, to attend to little things, but to not pay yourself a salary and to just be spending from the money that comes into the business instead of putting it back into the business to grow it is recipe for disaster. Okay? So how do we manage our direct costs? One is sourcing. Efficiency in business begins with managing the cost of materials that go into your production process. So where do you source from? How do you source? These are the questions you need to ask yourself. If you're using raw materials to produce finished goods that you then sell, your sourcing channels, it's one of your key partnership arrangements. Where are you buying from? I know somebody who's doing a food business, and initially when she started, what she would do is, because people will order, so she will make the food, but she will have to go to she literally was going to Spa and to Ebano and all those places to buy, because it's based off of order. Until I had to sit with her to say, look, you have to have a storage arrangement. And then you need to let your customers know that they cannot order every day. So, they cannot get deliveries every day. Choose 2 days in a week that you will deliver, right? So what you do is you are building up orders towards those delivery days, so that way you can bulk buy your raw materials. As again, somebody wants to eat peppered snails, You will now go and first buy pepper snails, and because you don't want to buy plenty so that it doesn't go bad, you will buy very expensive. Meanwhile, you have forgotten that you've already priced this menu, and people will only pay what you've put on your price list. Okay. All right. So there's sourcing, there's handling, there is storage. Because of time, I'm just going to run through quickly. And then, of course, there's production. This is the last thing I would speak on quickly, and then we will continue from here, just building our financials at the next class. So I want to encourage you, please don't be late, come in early so that we can have a lot of time together. Understanding profits quickly. Revenue, you want to take a picture of this, because when you get your assignment for, I think it's the assignment for week 4 now, you will need this formula. Your revenue equals price multiplied by quantity. Now look at that table, you will see revenue here. How to arrive at your revenue is your price per unit, that's your selling price per unit, multiplied by the units sold. Your units sold is your quantity. That will give you your revenue figure. And of course, your costs. You can see here, you have your variable costs, which is priced at your cost per unit, multiplied by the number of units that you produce. And then your fixed costs, which are the costs that don't change regardless of the units or your price, or your costs. And of course, your revenue minus your cost will give you profits. Where revenue is lower than the cost, or cost is higher than revenue, it is called a loss. That business has made a loss. But where your revenue is higher than your cost and puts you in a positive position, that is a profit. Okay. So at this point, let me take any questions. We need to shut. I think I can hand over to our coordinator.
Sorry, ma'am. I have a question.
Please go ahead, sir.
All right. So my first question is based on when you were explaining the basic research method earlier, that you spoke about the 5 steps, survey and the likes.
Yes.
So so my question is on survey, right? You said survey could be carried out through phone, online, and in person, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, let's say for a survey that is very critical, let's say an FMCG company wants to launch a product and they are targeting corner, which we know that an average person there might not know how to go about the internet and all, and traveling down there might be easy. How can you go about such survey to have well detailed market information?
So sorry, take that part again. Who is the target?
Okay, so target is corner, right?
Okay, core
And
north. Okay.
and based on level of advancement, an average northerner does not really know how to go about phone operation and the likes, and
Yeah.
level of security in the country is quite alarming. So how can you go about such situation in order to get a well detailed market information?
That's an interesting question. I will leverage the example of how Mohammed Yunus, was able to start grabbing banking, even though, I mean, it was from that Bangladesh, the poor parts. So it wasn't like he was not a person that wasn't familiar. It wasn't an area he wasn't familiar with. But in this case, what they did, because they were also engaging with illiterates, right? People who do not have access to technology of any kind, they leveraged their existing associations. Does that make sense? They utilize their existing associations. So these people typically are in some association, one association or the other. Now, I'm honestly not very certain that there's a part of this where you will not be able, where you will not have to make a trip to meet with the arrowheads of associations or community leaders that can help you with mobilizing for information. That's one. Now, if there are also entities that conduct research, market research, there are actually some organizations that specialize in conducting market research. It might be a more expensive approach, but at least they get to do all the work for you. That's also another this thing to leverage. So they would take on the responsibility of sending people down there, making the necessary connections, and having them answer those questions that you need. And what they would do is organize meetings. So like, let me use the Southwest, for example. We have, or even the Igbos, there are all sorts of associations, cooperatives, right? Cooperative societies and the likes. Market women have their own associations. And so when they have meetings, surveys are conducted at such meetings. Somebody goes there with questions and starts to ask them and does a head count of people who raise their hands to certain questions. You get? So you need to think through how important this is to you to get that information, and perhaps start to actively search for people you can collaborate with who can help you do that research, carry out that research in that axis. I hope that helps, sir.
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay. Nkoyo is asking, do you really need partners when starting a business? Now, I think you may have misunderstood the key partners referenced in that. Let me go back there. And let's look at the definition very quickly. I know time is fast spent. I hope you're not. They are a network of partners that make executing on the business model effective. So examples, look at the example of Netflix that I gave earlier. Content creators. So they are essentially people who contribute, who bring inputs into your business. Not necessarily Nkoyo and I, Busola, we are coming into partnership arrangements to own a business together. That's not what this is. This is not ownership. This is not partnership with a mindset of ownership. This is partnership that is people who bring inputs into your business. So Netflix case, for example, they need studios. So they enter into arrangements with studio owners, for example. They need distributors, they need manufacturers, they need ISPs. I hope that helps. So you need to look at what does my business need and who does my business need that I need to come into some sort of arrangement with to get regular supply from them. Okay. Thank you, Nkoyo. Clement says, my second question, I really understand the need to diversify into different business or product niche, but wouldn't the stress and competition of that new niche affect your focus? If not, how do we balance both business while starting with a small structure? Now, to start with, I would say focus. Focus is key. People who start to diversify after they have, solidified one, you get. They start to create other sources of revenue or other business streams when they have gotten the first one right, because it is it's from that first one that you are then, branching out to other areas. So start with one, get it right, and then you can start thinking about diversifying. All right, sir, you're most welcome. Any other question? Our moderator says it's time for us all to go and rest for the day. Okay, thank you very much. Over to you, sir. Godwin, thank you.
Thank you so much, Sola. That was a very insightful session. Just very quickly, please, if you're not following us on any social media platform, just search Adara Foundation on Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, and X. And Pastor mentioned that there's going to be an assignment, so look out for the assignment in the WhatsApp community. And just to remind you guys, we hope to see you next week, Saturday, same time. Come prepared. Thank you so much. You have a good evening.